The Senate will come to order. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we have some authors' motions to be read by the Secretary.
Senator Dietzig moves that the name of Senator Weber be added as co-author to Senate File Number 60. Senator Herr moves that his name be stricken as a co-author of Senate File Number 37. Senator Torres Ray moves that her name be stricken as co-author to Senate File Number 37. Senator Franzen moves that her name be stricken as a co-author to Senate File Number 37. Senator Hayden moves that his name be stricken as co-author, shown as a co-author, and that the name of Senator Limmer be added as chief author to Senate File Number 37. Senator Limmer moves that the names of Senator Gazelka and Hall be added as co-authors of Senate File Number 37.
We will take the authors' motions that were read by the Secretary as one motion. All those in favor say aye. Opposed, say no. The motion prevails. Members, we are awaiting a message from the House on House File 1. As we wait for the message, we're going to go to Senator Limmer to start explaining the bill. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the bill that we will soon be receiving from the House is one that is a product of compromise as well as some very good conversation regarding the future of Minnesota policing. Much of this was inspired by the recent death and arrest and death of George Floyd, and it caused Minnesota to think about how our policies regarding law enforcement, the products of arrest, the products of discipline of our police force are being handled, and how at this very instantaneous time after that death, of how we can resolve and get ourselves on a good first step in affecting responsible policing throughout the state of Minnesota. The bill has over 30 sections, and I will highlight each one of them. The first one is sections 1 through 4. It provides for an improved stress and trauma resource for emergency service providers. Section 5 establishes a BCA independent investigatory unit. Section 6 addresses police residency reform, authorizing residency incentives rather than a requirement. It encourages cities to provide incentives for police officers to live in the city that they patrol. Sections 9 and 10 update the use of force statutes to preserve the concept of sanctity of life, meaning not to rely on deadly force to effect an arrest in the first instance, but build up to that in the event that circumstances would require that. Mandatory reporting to the BCA is found in Section 11 regarding use of force incidents. That's mandatory reporting to the BCA by chiefs of police throughout the state of Minnesota. Section 12 is the addition of 2 public members to the post board. You may recall that was an amendment on the floor of the Senate that we adopted in our first bill. Section 14 prohibits warrior training. Section 15 creates the advisory council called the Ensuring Police Excellence and Improving Community Relations Advisory Board. Section 16 creates the post-board database of public anonymized peace officer data. Section 17 through 19 requires the post board to update model use of force policy and local agencies to adopt similar policies. The inspection authority granted to the board for ensuring compliance. Section 20 involves chief law enforcement officers required to submit data for post-board database. Section 21 involves crisis intervention and mental illness crisis training requirements. Post Board is directed to evaluate the effectiveness of the required training and to create a central list of approved professional training entities. When we first began the training and the requirements for mental illness over the last 3 to 4 years, evaluation of those programs suggested that we use professional trainers rather than the ones we previously were using. You might remember, and you can find it in section 22, you might remember autism training requirements was an amendment that was created on the floor of the Senate, and it required 4 hours of training for police officers to recognize signs of autism. Section 23 requires the statutory duty for officers to intercede and report excessive use of force. That too was one of the original issues that we adopted in the original bill. Arbitration reform for peace officers involved in disciplinary proceedings changed slightly after negotiations with the House. We were starting to go down an ALJ route, but the more we studied it, the more discomfort we had, and we moved into the arbitration reform. But instead of allowing each party to strike an arbitrator, we're limiting the arbitrators to a specific number. I think it's 6. And those particular arbitrators will be trained not only in law enforcement proceedings and policies, but they will also be trained on cultural diversity awareness. The Section 25 extends the $6 million per year of post-board training appropriation. It extends it only 2 years with a sunset to be enacted at that 2-year period of time. Section 26, the Bureau of Mediation Services, triggers an appropriation for arbitration reforms. Section 27, the BCA appropriation is established for an independent investigatory unit. The BCA appropriation in autism training is also there. And Section 29, the post-board appropriation for creating and maintaining a database. Section 30 repeals the current language for public safety peer counseling and is replaced by language in Section 3. There's also a few other items. We included the extension of the Murdered and Missing Indigenous Task Force. You may recall that their process or their study was interrupted by COVID-19. There was a deadline for a report to be given to us. I think it's January of this coming year, and we are extending that deadline. And I think Senator or Representative Moran also included an item explaining or defining to a better degree the concept of intent, which was accepted by us in negotiations. Mr. Chair, this is my outline, and I'm finished with that outline, and I'll stand for any questions that may come up.
Discussion on House File 1, Senator Dziedzic.
Thank you, Mr. President. My first question is, as Senator Limmer was going through the bill, so I got the draft at about 9:15, and it's the A20-0819, but my sections appear to be off what Senator Limmer was referring, so I don't know if you have an engrossed copy or where is it on the computer? I couldn't find it on the computer either, so.
Senator Dziedzic, we just received the message from the House,
Okay.
and let us get the bill in its order, in its correct form here as soon as we can. Just give us a moment, members, and we will process the report from the message from the House. Remaining under motions and resolutions will revert to the third order of business, messages from the House. The Secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following House file herewith transmitted. House File Number 1, a bill for an act relating to public safety. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
There's no action required on that message. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we'll move to the fourth order of business, first reading of House bills. House File 1 is given its first reading. Remaining under motions and resolutions, Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that an urgency be declared within the meaning of Article 4, Section 19 of the Constitution of Minnesota with respect to House File 1, and that the rules of the Senate be so far suspended as to give House File Number 1 its second and third reading and place it on final passage.
Discussion on that motion, Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to encourage members also to vote in support of this urgency.
Senator Gazelka renews his motion to declare an urgency on House File 1. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion prevails. The Secretary will give House File 1 its second reading.
House File Number 1.
Second reading. All right, members, the correct version of House File 1 is now online, and paper copies are being made as we speak. So if you would like a hard copy, a paper copy, let the front desk know, and we will make sure that you get one, but the correct version is available online on your computers. So with that, Senator Dietzich. Okay. Senator Bigham.
Thank you, Mr. President. I had to lower that mic. A provision that I have worked on for over a year is included in this bill, and it has to do with peer counseling and critical incident stress management. And first, I want to really thank Representative Moeller and Representative Knorr for their efforts in this provision, but also the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers, Police Chiefs, Sheriffs, a whole group of people that come together over a provision that really, I think, will make better officers, making sure that they can deal with the stress of the job. Again, I'm the daughter and sister of firefighters. They don't unsee what they see, Mr. President, and so this kind of allows them to deal with all the emotions that fill that bucket from the day-to-day incidences. And I appreciate Attorney General Ellison and Commissioner Harrington and the task force that brought this recommendation forward, and all the officers. I wanted to thank Cottage Grove Police Officer Mike Vandervoort for also bringing this forward. The rest of the provisions, I would say, are a good start, Mr. President. I think we're at a starting line, and I'm sure there's going to be more discussion and more work to be done in the future. And I just think that this is a moment in time where we can really take meaningful action, and this is probably a start in the right direction, and we're going to continue to build, Mr. President, on these. So I think going forward, the provision I'm speaking about with the peer counseling and critical incident stress management will save lives. we have a really high rate of officer suicide, first responder suicide, that this will hopefully address that tragedy. And the additional fact that this will make better officers, which will make for safer communities. So thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on House File 1, Senator Ralph.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few general comments. I believe this this bill is a product of a great deal of work. It's a good bill. It does something that I have spoken several times on the floor before regarding, and that is that this bill provides an environment that encourages departments that have good policies and that have worked hard to build community relations to continue that. It supports that. It provides tools for departments that do need help in developing community relations and developing a better understanding of the environment in which they may be forced to operate. Specifically, the training on mental illness and mental health, autism in particular, is very important for peace officers to understand when they're dealing with people who are having mental issues. So I support this bill wholeheartedly and urge that the members of this body do so likewise. I want to commend Senator Limmer for his work on this. I think it's been a wonderful effort, and he's really done a great job putting it together. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further discussion on House File 1? Senator Herr.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to take this moment to say that I really thank the House Posse member for putting a lot of time and sleepless effort on this amendment, somewhat as amendment to this House File 1, and negotiate to the best of their ability. They've been pushing very, very hard. At the same time, I also want to express my appreciation for the guidance of Senator Jeff Hayden here in our Senate, and the togetherness of our Senate posse, myself, Senators Ray, Senator Franson, and Senator Bobby Joe Champion. And the negotiation may not come to an agreement as what we like to be, but I know that our work is not done. Our work is not done because people are still crying. They're crying for change. And when people is crying, it is our duty, it is our job as legislator to change the law. Law that people will feel safe, and law that are safe for people, and law that protect people and not giving institution the excessive power to abuse, nor get way for them to turn blind eyes on the injustice of poor people or poverty-stricken communities, and law that can earn the trust of people again. So I know that this is late, it's a wee hour, but I know that people out there are listening, because just now I received a number of emails from my constituents. This bill may not be to the fullest of their content. I was a little hesitate what to vote, but they urged me to go ahead and vote for this bill, even though it's not to the fullest of their content. And they want me to stand tall for another day of victory. So I look forward to work with our bipartisan effort here for a better change, for a better future. Thank you, Mr. President.
Further discussion on House File 1, Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would Senator Limmer yield for some questions?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I quickly scrambled, since I had my bill already tabbed. So I quickly scrambled, so I hope I have these numbers right. So it is the, I believe it's now on line 613, the Independent Use of Force Investigations Unit. Let me scroll here. So the title of that section is Independent Use of Force. But when I go and read the language, it talks about officer-involved death and conduct officer-involved death investigations. And then we go on to also add crim sex conduct cases involving peace officers. So I just kind of want to clarify, use of force can be more than just deadly use of force. So I just want to clarify that this title is somewhat misleading because it is, it's not all use of force. So the BCA independent unit won't be investigating all use of force, but just deadly use of force. Is that your understanding, Senator Limmer?
Mr. President.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dietzig, yes. That is my understanding.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you. Will Senator Limmer yield for another question?
Senator Limmer will continue to yield. Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So on the next page, I believe it's line 7.23, this independent use of force investigation that the BCA is setting up that is going to be costing, we're putting a few, I believe, $1 million into it. So in subdivision 7 of this section, it says the independent use of force investigation unit expires August 1st, 2024. So, Senator Limmer, why is there, we're going to all the time to set up this investigative unit? Why are we sunsetting it on August 1st, 2024?
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chairman, or Mr. President and Senator Dietzig, I believe the original number was 2022. We extended it 2 years simply because of the workload. We kind of think that that workload will subside by then. There may be new cases, though, but it would be a good opportunity after these 4 years to revisit the demand as well as not only the workload, but also the working of this particular independent unit.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So then the next section down is residency incentives for peace officers. And so we've had the discussion, I believe, when we met back in June on residency requirements. So Minneapolis used to have a residency requirement that you had to live in the city of Minneapolis. There were certain exceptions, and there were people were grandfathered in. And so now this language says residency incentives for peace officers. A statutory or home rule charter, city or county may offer incentives to encourage a person hired as a peace officer to be a resident of the city or county. I believe Minneapolis at that time also had some encouragements, including setting it up so that law enforcement and other employees could apply for a first-time homebuyer program. And so is this something that, say in case I didn't ask, will Senator Limmer yield?
Senator Limmer will continue to yield. Senator
Thank you.
Dietzig.
Is this something that the city could do already, is set up incentives, or how is this different from what they could currently already do?
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dietzig, at least the history of Minneapolis, I think in the 1990s, maybe even into the late 1980s, they've kind of had an on and off relationship with residency requirements. I I think the line officers find it very difficult oftentimes to live in a city that they have to patrol in. It's rather a controversial issue in police circles. I believe it can work. We had a lot of discussion between the two chambers about this. We did not come to an agreement, and the closest thing we could do is encourage cities to reconsider their ideas, that we don't hinder them in any way in state law from creating some kind of incentive. You are correct. There have been incentives for home ownership. Sometimes there's a break on property taxes to live in the city. There may even be fix-up loans that one could create on low-interest loans. All sorts of different creative ideas to encourage police officers to live in the city. But we also were wondering, if that's good for a police officer, why isn't that good for other needed professionals in certain cities where there just aren't any, where that type of residency would create a more complete, integrated web of professionalism that actually is living among the patients or the customers that they serve in the private sector. And we just couldn't seem to come to a clear understanding of a forced residency, so we opted for this.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe that the city had incentive programs, as you say, anywhere from in the 80s to the 90s. We also have to live in a district that we represent. So we also, work and live in a district and are out and about in the district and going to Cub and going to the grocery stores and shopping and running into our constituents. And so I don't think it is a bad thing to have people live in the community and get to know the community members and get to know the people and see people just out and about in their everyday life. So I think it's something that should be encouraged. If we continue on to, I believe it's now on line 9.9, limitations of the use of certain restraints. And so this has to do with the chokehold. So if you look at, starting on line 9.9, if I have that correct, the line number, a peace officer may not use any of the following restraints unless Section 609.066 authorizes the use of deadly force. And this goes to the chokehold. So they are now limited to when they could use the chokehold, but if my read, it is not a ban. They are still allowed to use it when deadly force is authorized. And then we go on to the next page under Section B, and then it defines chokehold. I notice that this definition is slightly different than the version that was in the earlier bills we heard in June. So will Senator Limmer yield for a question?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So am I reading this right, Senator Limmer, that this limits the use of the chokehold, but it is not an outright ban?
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Senator Dietzig, you are correct. There is an exception, as you saw on page 9, that in the event, and only in the event, that the officer needs to save his own life or the life of another, that a chokehold would be allowed. There was concern in law enforcement circles that we don't want to take maybe the very last opportunity or tactic away from a police officer if his own life or someone else's life was in danger, and there was no other means to conduct that saving of that life or their own. And we opted for that. The law enforcement community was also very clear. They do not want to use chokeholds in their day-to-day practice. They condemn that, but they do reserve that opportunity at least to defend their own life or the life of someone else when all other options have been negated in the conflict. Mr. President,
Senator Limmer.
one other comment I'd like to make regarding the residency requirement. Senator Dietzick talked about the one side of the equation where it might be beneficial for a police officer to live in the community that he's hired to serve in. But I also know of a circumstance where a good friend of mine who's a retired police officer, he lived in St. Louis Park. His father was a St. Louis Park police officer. And in his high school years, his father, in the course of his duties, had to shoot a young man who was a high school student of my friend at that time. And the friend, who was the son of the police officer, was ridiculed, was condemned, was judged, was bullied in the time he was in his high school years for 3 years because of what his father had to do. There's an example where living in the district where you are serving can become quite a difficult thing for a spouse or a child to live with if you're forced to live in the residency that's required. At that time, there was no residency required, but it's a good example of how that relationship could be abused. And we did talk about that in our negotiations with the House. And that, again, was one of the other reasons why what was led to that policy that you have before you.
Further discussion on the bill. Senator Dietzick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Limmer, so you know my dad was a former police officer, and we grew up in that neighborhood that he patrolled. And one of my good friends in high school, her father was the chief of police or deputy chief of police at the U of M, where I went to college. So between her dad being the cop at the U and my dad being the cop and the council member at the U, yeah, I can tell a lot of stories. But we also survived. So it can be done. It was, again, there's lots of stories. It got interesting at times, but people survive and it can be done. So thank you for bringing that up. So we were back on the chokehold question, and so it does limit it, but it doesn't outright ban it. And then also on the next page, it's a different definition of describing chokehold than what was in the Senate bill. I believe this is from the House language. Will Senator Limmer yield?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Limmer, is this the House language or is this a compromise version of language, the definition of the chokehold?
Senator Limmer.
I was reminded, Mr. President and Senator Dietzick, that this is a compromise language, but it's closer to the House language than what the Senate was.
Senator Dietzick.
Thank you, Mr. President. So next I'm going to the warrior-style training prohibited, which I believe is starting around line 12.26. And so for the public, if anybody is out there listening at this hour, this is training that is somewhat controversial. The officer that shot Mr. Castile in Falcon Heights took this training, and that came up in that court case quite a bit on what type of, it's more of a warrior style, so it is more of that you are, military style policing as opposed to community policing. And so this language prohibits that training. So again, it doesn't necessarily prohibit. Will Senator Limmer yield for a question?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzick.
Thank you. So around starting on 13.3, it says that we as the state will not pay for it, and that the post board may not certify this as part of their continuing education course requirement, and the board may not grant continuing education credit to a peace officer for this course, and the board may not reimburse a law enforcement agency for this training. But Senator Limmer, this does not prohibit a law officer from paying for this class themselves, and then could a union or some other entity pay for them to take this class in training?
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dietzig, as I look at lines 13.9, training prohibited, it makes reference to a law enforcement agency may not provide warrior-style training directly or through a third party to a peace officer. Your question was whether or not an officer could independently seek that training, or can that be offered through a union? You know, this is the first time anyone has raised that question. We didn't have that question in our negotiations with the House. We did define what warrior training was on the previous page, as you might have seen. I don't think we can really regulate what an individual police officer does in his own free time. But I can't answer you on the third or on the union question. We just didn't have that discussion, and it didn't become a part of this bill. I think the intent of the legislature, though, if you look at the spirit of the law, is that we want warrior training to end. And I think we would be frowning on any type of warrior training in the future.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Limmer, that was helpful. I think it is helpful to understand what the intent is, so I appreciate knowing what the intent is and clarifying that. So now if we go to I believe it's the next section, it's the Ensuring Police Excellent and Improving Community Relations Advisory Council. And so this was actually my bill, and it was for a little different variation of it. So in that one, it did actually look at closer to police and their employer relationships. And so who is on the board has changed, and the purpose and duties has changed. So this one, it is more maintaining policies. So this is a Ensuring Police Excellence, Improving Community Actions Advisory Council. So this is an advisory council to the Post Board consisting of 15 members. It is a whole group of people, including 6 community members, of which 4 members shall represent community-specific boards, 1 member shall be a mental health advocate and appointed by NAMI, 1 member shall be an advocate for victims and appointed by Violence Free Minnesota, 4 members appointed by the legislature, and it is to have geographical balance. So I think that is a good thing. Their purposes and duties have slightly changed. So this one is maintaining policies and regulating peace officers in a manner that ensures protection of civil and human rights. The previous bill, and it might have been because it was dealing more with employee-employer relationships, also included League of Minnesota Cities and AMC. Will Senator Limmer yield for a question?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Was there any discussion on including the League of Cities or Association of Minnesota Counties on this board, or because the role has changed and the rationale has changed, were they just no longer needed on this commission?
Mr. President.
Senator Limmer.
Senator Dietzig, as I recall in the discussions that we had, this started out as not advisory panel, but it was a series of let's call them committees that would be added to the Post Board with direct involvement. We do have to recall that the Post Board is an entity that was created for standards and training only. And the direction of the House wanted to expand the purpose of the Post Board. It has slightly expanded under this bill, but the real direction came from getting more citizens involved in the role of the Post Board. We rejected the idea that it would be an integrated element of the Post Board. We wanted to make it advisory, but we wanted to make sure that we included a broad swath of citizens. but also to have an element of law enforcement in it. So you have the 5 law enforcement entities represented. We wanted to make sure that the legislature was included in that involvement, so each caucus can appoint 1 person to it. The 6 other members were the 4 from the racial councils that we have. Some are, the ones that we have involve Black Heritage Council. There's others on, I believe, Pacific Islanders. There's others on Asian individuals and Native Americans. And I know I'm going to get in trouble because I missed one, but nevertheless, we thought that this balance was as close to equal. If you add up the people beyond law enforcement, it's a slight majority on civilian involvement. We thought it was adequate for the purposes of advising the post board, and didn't believe that the other entities would serve any more of a useful purpose than what we have here.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm getting near the end. So next, if we go to, I believe it's on page 20.25, this is the duty to intercede and report. So this is regardless of tenure or rank, a peace officer must intercede when they observe another peace officer using excessive force, and that peace officer who observes another employee using the excessive use of force has the duty to report the incident in writing within 24 hours to the chief law enforcement officer. I think that is a good addition. This is, I believe, was not in the Senate bill, so probably came from the House. A peace officer who breaches a duty established in this subdivision is subject to discipline by the board. And so this is another layer of consequences. So they have to report, they have the duty to intercede, they have the duty to report, their local law enforcement agency can discipline them if they don't, and then they can also be disciplined by the post board. When we had the amendment, I believe it was Senator Hayden's amendment when we were here in June, we also had a provision to prohibit retaliation, so that that officer who does intercede and does report cannot be prohibited against. Was there any discussion on adding any language prohibiting retaliation?
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dietzig, no, there was not. And I think the reason why is that even though we had a provision on duty to intercede and report in the Senate version, the House also had it. And I think we just became very narrowly, our vision was narrowly focused on the 2 versions, and we massaged the 2 together to come up with the product that you have before you. I don't remember any discussion about retaliation.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is an incident where we've had this discussion. If you listen to the tapes regarding Mr. George Floyd, and there was a 911 operator who did call, and she kind of hinted that, I don't know if I'm going to be retaliated against, I don't care, I need to make this phone call. So I think this is a big, important addition it's a missed opportunity to not include it here. And I will just say that as a member of the DFL Senate, who was, to my knowledge, not included in any degree in the discussion of this, that's where it's good to have a broad coalition of people discussing these bills, because this is something that we were pretty strong on and that we thought should be included. And so, again, when you don't include everybody, when we don't have hearings on the bill, I got this at 9:15, and so when you don't have hearings on the bill, and then all of a sudden we're hearing it late at night, whatever time it is, there is unfortunately some missed opportunities that could be in this bill, and I think this is one of them. Now, if we go to the next section, I believe it's section 24, peace officer grievance arbitration selection procedure. This is, again, wasn't in the Senate bill. It was in the House bill. I believe it's around line 21.6. So this changes the grievance. So when a peace officer is reprimanded, their grievance procedure through arbitration through PELRA is slightly changed, and this just changes for the peace officers. But one of the questions I have, if Senator Limmer will yield.
He will yield. Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So the grievance arbitration as defined means binding arbitration of a grievance under the grievance procedure in a collective bargaining agreement covering peace officers as required by this section or sections, and it lists some more sections, to the extent those sections are consistent with this section. And then it has a roster of arbitrators, and this says the arbitrators on this roster to oversee the police grievance cases. The arbitrators on this roster created by this subdivision shall not serve as an arbitrator in a labor arbitration other than a grievance arbitration as defined in this section. So, Senator Limmer, I think I asked if you will yield.
He will
Thank
yield.
you. So can these arbitrators do other arbitration cases, or are they limited to only law enforcement arbitration? Because my concern is that as an arbitrator, the really good arbitrators do a variety of cases, and I don't know if to just do these law enforcement cases will pay enough. So was that discussed? And again, I did not thoroughly review. We just got this bill at 9:15, and I didn't thoroughly review. I know the House discussed it. I know there were multiple discussions. I know it came up in several editorial opinion pages, articles. It came up from I believe the business partnership suggested it, and so I'm wondering where that language came from and how that impacts arbitrators and our ability to get quality arbitrators.
Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Dietzig, you are correct. The way the bill is written, the arbitrators are limited to this type of area, and they would be restricted in other areas. As for the source, this source was from the House language. They thought that having the focus and the training that was required to be an arbitrator in this area was enough, and they wanted to limit the arbitrators to this practice for the purposes of developing a specialty. Mr. President, Senator Dietzig also made comment about not having a wide enough selection of people discuss this bill, but we did have a number of people from the House that represented not only, well, I think almost all of the members were members of their posse caucus. That in itself reflected a wide swath of experience as well as feelings toward this particular subject matter. They also did not include some of the arbitrator sources, or not arbitrator sources, but the previous sources we talked about, like the League of Minnesota Cities involved in it. I thought we had a rather wide selection of individuals. Part of the problem is that when you're dealing in a special session and requiring to come up with major reforms in a subject matter that no one brought up prior to the death of George Floyd, except a few isolated bills, we had to work very quickly because of the demand as well as the interest, and it took us 2 special sessions, but I think we, like I said, we have a very good first step in this subject area.
Senator Dietzig.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I have, I don't have the new page number for this, but this was a Representative Moran amendment into the House bill. It is actually with 2 modifications. It was Senator Champion, Senate File 3434, and this is on the use of force. So I don't have the page number, unfortunately, but I just have two questions because there were two changes. And so is what this bill talks about the legislative intent. So the legislature hereby finds and declares the following, that the authority to use deadly force by peace officers is a critical responsibility that shall be exercised judiciously and with respect for human rights and dignity and for the sanctity of every human life. Then it goes on and says use of force, notwithstanding the provision of section 609.06 or 609.065, the use of deadly force by a peace officer in the line of duty is justified only, and it used to say when, but now it says only if an objectively reasonable officer would believe, based on the totality of the circumstances known to the officer at the time and without the benefit of hindsight, that such force is necessary. Will Senator Limmer yield?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzich.
Thank you, Mr. President. So can you explain just that slight difference of removing when? So the deadly force is justified only when to is justified only if.
Senator Limmer.
Mr. President, Senator Dietzich, and for the benefit, I believe we're on page 10, line 2, where it says use of deadly force only when necessary rather than if necessary. I don't recall the discussion. I believe it's really more stylistic than substantive. I have no other explanation for it.
Senator Dietzich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will Senator Limmer yield for, I believe, one more question?
Senator Limmer will yield. Senator Dietzich.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then further down, and this is a little more, we have the discussion in judiciary all the time on what does apparent mean, what does imminent mean, and so this one talks about the use of deadly force is justified to protect the peace officer or another from. And now the current language says apparent. I believe Senator Champion's bill said imminent. And now we've removed both of those, and it just says to protect the peace officer or another from death or great bodily harm. So my understanding of the addition of imminent instead of apparent is so that that death is forthcoming. So they believe that they are truly, right now, something is going to happen. When you remove the apparent or imminent, what does that do to that line? So it's to protect the peace officer or another from death. Does it make it a little less urgent?
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Dietzich, we had a great deal of discussion between law enforcement, House members, as well as Senate members that were involved in this discussion. It went round and round, and Senator Moran presented this language as a compromise, and that's what we settled on. I don't think anyone really came up with a clear distinction of what would have been a superior word, but when Senator Representative Moran provided this language, I think everyone accepted it. Maybe it was a point of exhaustion, but nevertheless, this is the language that we all agreed on. We thought it was a good compromise because it didn't get us down either one of those rabbit holes on the words that were originally presented.
Senator Dietzich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Champion worked hard on this bill. I know he had requested hearings, and so I am glad that it is included because I do think it has the chance to actually make a difference. And again, I'm going to go back to that I received the bill to very quickly peruse it at about 9:15 this evening. I didn't need to be included in the discussions, but it would have been nice to have somebody from the Senate included in those discussions, or at least updated on a regular basis with language, with some ideas, because I think that it does help. I think having hearings helps. I think having a broad base, and they have a broad base of people in the House, but we also have a broad base of people in the Senate that have expertise, that we were all focused on little different things based on what our own experiences are. And so I think that, we had hearings in the Senate since the last special session, and it would have been nice to maybe have a hearing as this bill and these negotiations were going. And I understand that sometimes when you're in negotiation, that's hard, but we found time to do other hearings, and so it would have been nice to have the hearing, to actually learn more about this, to give the public the idea to absorb it, to see what is in it, and to have a discussion on it. And so that's just my comment, that I think that having a transparent, open process that allows as many people to the table and as many people to raise their concerns and questions is good, and I think that we should do that, and I think we should strive to do that. So thank you for the answers to the questions, and thank you for indulging me with the questions.
Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members. Just one point of clarification. I personally did send either 2 or 3 offer situations to Senator Bobby Joe Champion in the last 10 days because I felt it was important for somebody to be in the loop, as then we actually got to the points of what we were agreeing on and the language. I let Bobby Joe, Senator Champion, know when things were happening and asked him to circle back to Representative Mariani as well.
The Secretary will give House File 1 its third reading.
House File Number 1, a bill for an act relating to public safety, providing for law enforcement.
Third reading. Any final discussion on the bill? Senator Hayden.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I rise to have a few comments on this bill that I know that has been long in coming, and it's late in the evening. Many of you members in this chamber, or for some of the members in this chamber, the murders of George Floyd, Philando Castile, and Jamar Clark were glimpses into the horrors of black people, of what black people witness within the criminal justice system. For black people, Mr. President, these stories and names add to a long list and history of violence at the hands of police officers. George Floyd was murdered 8 blocks from where I live, and it could have easily been me. That has been the reality for too many black people for too long, not just in Minnesota, but across the entire nation. Minnesotans all want to move through our communities without the fear in the lives or loved ones. But time and time again, we've witnessed the evidence of horrors committed against black people by the police in the cities, on the back roads, in the living rooms, and on neighborhood streets, in the dark of night and in the light of day. We DFLers fought for weeks for robust police accountability measures and transformative criminal justice on this bill, and we think that this bill falls short of that. Weeks ago, after Minnesotans saw George Floyd murdered at the hands of police officers, it sparked outrage that people channeled into action. They used their voices to demand fundamental and transformative change. Mr. President, this bill allows cities and counties to offer incentives to encourage police officers and residents for the communities they work in. Mr. President, we don't think that that goes far enough. It establishes a Police Excellence and Improving Community Relations Board under the Post Board, and though we know that that was tightly negotiated, we think that there could have been a better chance of adding members to be integrated. As Senator Limmer said, we thought that that would have been a better place. It does mandate mental illness training, and we're appreciative of that. so that officers are not put in a position to do things that they're not trained to do. We do appreciate the mandating of the autism training. Some of the other things, the duty to intercede and changes to the arbitration process. While the bill was a product of compromise and includes some priorities of the PLCI caucus, it lacks the teeth, members, and it lacks the strong, robust policies that build the much-needed trust between the black community and law enforcement. This bill lacks the critical language such as penalties for bad actors and protections against retaliation who report those bad actors, Mr. President. So while this bill sets the groundwork for what we all need to know is it sets the groundwork for the work that we know needs to continue after this. The conversation cannot and will not end there with the passage of this bill, because there's a lot of work that will be required to protect black bodies. We must continue to work towards a just and fair criminal justice system for all with no exceptions. Every Minnesotans deserve to feel safe in their community across the state. We Senate DFLers will continue to advocate for legislation that accomplishes that. I do want to recognize my fellow PLCI caucus members that sometimes maybe members of this body don't know that they're here. Members like our chair, Senator Fung Her, Senator Patricia Torres Ray, Senator Melissa Franzen. But I also want to acknowledge, as you saw today, the thoroughness of my good friend and fellow Minneapolitan, Senator Kerry Disick, and the lead in Senator Limmer's committee, Senator Ron Latz. This bill would simply not exist or be possible if it wasn't for the leadership of those people. Meanwhile, there's an extreme lack of transparency in the Senate process. Instead of having honest, open, and deliberate conversations with each other, regardless to districts or background or committee assignments, Senate Republicans wasted days talking about statutes and crime refusing to address or discuss or even acknowledge the underlying issue of structural racism that led to George Floyd's murder. Police accountability and reforms put forth by the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus didn't receive a single hearing in the Senate, not one single hearing. Instead, we got a closed-door deal in the middle of the night with no public input. And I listened, and I want to be clear, I listened to Senator Gazelka said that he gave Senator Champion a ring a couple times and just wanted to make sure he could loop him in. Well, that's not what we do here in the Senate. It's not our process. That doesn't invite people in. So though we're here, though we appreciate the work that the House has done and to work with the Senate, we still believe that with a better process, there were critical provisions that could have been in. We do believe that we could have had a much better bill, a bill that would have been much more informed by the community that we all represent. We think that there is much work to be done on this issue. We think that it shouldn't have taken so long, shouldn't be 141 at the second special session to finally get here. We think that when we come back, and whoever is in control of this body, I would hope that they would take the time, they would emphasize, they would recognize, they wouldn't avoid the hard conversation that we need to have. And that not only goes for criminal justice and law enforcement, but that also goes for education. Members, we talked about that today. That also goes for health care. That also goes for transportation. This body has not done its work. And here we are again in the middle of July. I told one of my friends today, I think it was Senator Swedinsky, I've never been in session in July, not that I can remember, not Not this time. And here we are again, 145, in the cover of darkness, with the Senate minority not being informed, not being there every step of the way, having to hear it second and third hand. Maybe we get a little call from the leaders here. Maybe Senator Gazelka will find a little time in his day to pick up the phone and call one of our members to let us know what might happen. That's not the way we should do it. So I do want to respect the work that was done. I do want to be able to say that this is a first step, but it's that first small step. Mr. President, you know, it's those, sometimes we got those big steps. This is a little step. So I'm going to support it. I'm going to encourage my colleagues to do so, but we have a lot of work to be done if we're going to actually solve this issue, if we're actually going to deal with structural changes, if we're going to wake up, if we're going to get out of denial, if we're going to stop being last in every single indicator, every quality of life indicator for people of color, we're going to have to do much better. So, Mr. President, with that, I will ask members to vote for it reluctantly, but I would hope that we would do a much better job moving forward. I would hope that we would listen, and I would hope that we would not think that this is simply just for people of color. I would hope that we would think that this is helpful for all Minnesotans. Thank you, Mr. President.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Torres-Ray.
Thank you, Mr. President and members. I would like to let the public know that we started this process with a proposal that was not a bold proposal. And we did that because we didn't think that we could pass that in a divided legislature. We know that this bill is actually not the bill that communities of color want. We have been told that from the very beginning. The communities that are impacted by police brutality want more. They want transformational policy, and this bill is just not that. Today, I would like to thank the House majority for bringing us here. I think it became very clear in this short hearing here in the Senate floor from the responses of the chair of the Judiciary Committee that said time and time again to the questions that Senator Disick asked tonight. He said that came from the House. Senator Limmer responded time and time again. That language came from the House. That was actually done in the House. All of this work, members, was done in the House. He is actually correct. I want to thank the Posse Caucus for the tremendous engagement, for the hundreds of hours that they spent in the community, individually and collectively. The House actually held a lot of hearings, and many people came to testify. Law enforcement officers, county commissioners, activists, experts, parents. People actually came to testify and provided an opinion. That's what we do. That's what legislators are supposed to do. That did not happen in the Minnesota Senate. We never had a hearing. We never were invited to participate in any conversations with the community. We should not do that again, members. This process is about community engagement. We do policy with people. So today, I want to tell members that this is a process that has happened time and time again in the Senate, and we need to demand better. The House did this work, and I am grateful to them. But this bill is really not a good result. And my commitment to all of you is that I will continue this work, and I will not be voting for this bill tonight, because I believe that this bill is very incomplete. I cannot go back to my community, to the activists that have worked with me, to the families, to the relatives, to the mothers of all the black men that have died in the hands of the police, and tell them that this bill actually responds today to their calls for justice. I don't believe it is. I will be voting no. And I am going to tell Gianna Floyd, George Floyd's daughter, that my caucus, the Minority Caucus, is making a commitment to you and your family and to all the children and the parents that are there that have lost their fathers, that we will work for justice. And this is just the beginning for us. We promise you that we're not done, and we want to let you know that this is very insufficient. And some members may vote for this because it's all we could do right now. But this is not good enough. So I will be voting no, and I encourage some members to do the same. Thank you, members.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I really wasn't planning on making much of a speech on closing, but I just wanted to make sure people realized, and for the record, we did have a hearing on this bill. It started on the very first proposal. I think it lasted at 3.5 to 4 hours. We invited 22 members from various communities, including minority populations. Activists spoke. City officials, I believe, spoke. Representatives of larger city groups spoke. Law enforcement spoke. And a number of law enforcement. We even had family members who had lost loved ones at the hands of a police shooting. Unlike the description that the governor made of that hearing, we did not interrupt anyone. We gave everyone equal amount of time. I believe there were 22 people that gave testimony to that committee. And then we made our vote after that. I thought it was very respectful. We gave very clear instruction to our members not to interrupt. If they had questions, wait till all of the discussion was over. And so some of the comments I heard tonight were simply not true. We did have public hearing. And I suppose there's always a debate of whether or not you can have more public discussion, but nevertheless, in light of special sessions that had limited times, I just wanted to make sure that on the record that we tried to accommodate the public as best we could. So, Mr. Chairman, this is a compromise bill. And in compromise, those that are involved in the debate don't always get everything they want. And nevertheless, it does reveal that there are issues that need to be resolved in this subject area. And as others have said, this is an important first step. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll end my comments, and I hope everyone can understand and back the compromise that we have.
Final discussion on the bill. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I know it's late. I just have a few comments. This particular bill in another body passed 102 to 29. So you had a huge number of Republicans and Democrats in that other body voting for this, and I would expect the same here. This is the very essence of what we do here, and that is take many ideas and work together, Republicans and Democrats, House and Senate, to actually pass something that makes a difference. And I do think this bill would make a difference. But as we began this process, there were a number of voices and things that we, frankly, were going to weed out. When you have the Minneapolis City Council and Congressman Omar and other Democrats say we need to defund the police or dismantle the police, we said no, that's not something we're going to do. But there were other people across the aisle from us that was not their intention. They wanted to work on reforms that would make a difference. And so we rolled up our sleeves and worked together with people that we could find some common ideas in that we thought would matter and would make a difference. Many of us listened to many voices. I listened to the voices of a number of moms who lost loved ones in police situations. And I talked to many community members in different communities within Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I talked to the police and the different organizations of the police. And I talked to people of the Posse group, both in House and Senate. But that was happening throughout this whole body, and that's how good bills get done. And let me just say that as we went through this, Senator Limmer's bill, 10 of the provisions that started in the Senate here are in this bill. Is the language slightly different? Yes, that's the nature of the House and Senate working together to get a compromise bill. So 10 of those, 10 of the 11, and then 5 others. So 15 provisions, members, are in this bill. 15. In a special session, 15 provisions is amazing. Do we think it's the end of it? No. There was a number of provisions that we just said, these need to be vetted in a hearing, in a regular session where you can have a lot more voices. That was something we all wanted, but we sensed the urgency of doing something. And so we did ban chokeholds, except if you're trying to protect the life of that individual or he was protecting somebody else. We did focus on the sanctity of life, recognizing that as police approach situations, we want the least amount of force possible, but sometimes they need a lot of force. We did focus on mental health and autism and how do we address some of those situations so that we don't have moms losing loved ones in those situations. We did have more input from citizens, adding 2 more people to the post board and then forming a citizen advisory committee. But we did not want the citizens to have authority over the post board. Like all boards, this board needed to be run by the professionals within it. So in this case, it's police, and others it's attorneys, and others it's accountants. But we thought it was particularly important to have citizens engaged in speaking to these organizations to make sure that they were the best they could be. We did reform arbitration, which creates the ability to pluck out bad apples when they're not doing their job. That was a big step. And we did offer incentives for police to live in the communities they're from. We didn't want to force them to do that. There are reasons sometimes that police don't want to live in their particular community. I knew one person that worked in one city and lived in St. Paul, but they lived in a different city. So it wasn't about being in St. Paul. For them, it was find a less expensive place to live. And so we looked at so many issues and had dialogue back and forth, and frankly, members, that was good government. So it's late, but members, I'm proud of this bill. I'm proud of the work that many people did on this. I'm proud of the work that Limmer did, Senator Limmer, to carry this over the finish line. And members, I would recommend a strong green vote on this.
Members, we're on final passage of House File 1. Seeing no further discussion, the Secretary will take the roll. Members in the retiring room, room 303, and the President's office, please come to the chamber to vote. Members in room 323, 237, and 206, please come to the chamber to vote. I'll now call on Senator Kent to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Kent.
Thank you, Mr. President. I report aye for Senator Bach.
Bach votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Carlson.
Carlson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Champion.
Champion votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Clausen.
Clausen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Eaton.
Eaton votes no. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Franzen.
Franzen votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Hoffman.
Hoffman votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Isaacson.
Isaacson votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Klein.
Klein votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Lane.
Lane votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Latz.
Latz votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report no for Senator Marty.
Marty votes no. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Newton.
Newton votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Pappas.
Pappas votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Rest.
Rest votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Sparks.
Sparks votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Tomasoni.
Tomasoni votes aye. Senator Kent.
I report aye for Senator Wickland.
Wickland votes aye. I will now call on Senator Jasinski to report the votes of the members voting under Rule 40.7. Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Hall votes aye.
Hall votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Senjum votes aye.
Senjum votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Johnson votes no.
Johnson votes no. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Weber votes yes.
Weber votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Housley votes aye.
Housley votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Osmic votes aye.
Osmic votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Goggin votes aye.
Goggin votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Rosen votes aye.
Rosen votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Westrom votes aye.
Westrom votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Dames votes aye.
Dames votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Nelson votes aye.
Nelson votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Anderson B votes aye.
Anderson B votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Ingebrigtsen votes aye.
Ingebrigtsen votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Eichhorn votes aye.
Eichhorn votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
Senator Jensen votes aye.
Jensen votes aye. Senator Jasinski.
That is all the votes I have currently, Mr. President.
Senator Jasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Newman votes aye.
Newman votes aye. All members having voted who have the desire to vote, the Secretary will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 7 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. Remaining under motions and resolutions, we have a couple authors' motions to be read by the Secretary.
Senator Hayden moves that his name be stricken as co-author of Senate File Number 37. Senator Champion moves that his name be stricken as co-author to Senate File Number 37. Senator Limmer moves that the name of Senator Ralph be added as co-author to Senate File Number 37.
The author's motions read by the secretary are correct. We'll take those author's motions read by the secretary as one motion. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, say no. Motion prevails. Remaining under motions and resolutions, the secretary will read Senate Resolution number 8. Before the secretary reads Senate Resolution number 8, we'll revert to the third order of business under motions and resolutions, messages from the House. The secretary will read the message.
Mr. President, I have the honor to announce the passage by the House of the following Senate file herewith return Senate file number 4, Bill for an Act relating to motor vehicles. Mr. President, I have the honor to inform you that the House of Representatives of the state of Minnesota is about to adjourn the 2020 second special session sine die. Patrick D. Murphy, Chief Clerk, House of Representatives.
There's no action required on those messages. Now the secretary will read Senate Resolution number 8.
Senators Gazelka and Kent introduce Senate Resolution number 8, a Senate resolution relating to adjournment of the special session.
To the resolution, Senator Gazelka.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do something.
Senator Gazelka, you move that the Senate adopt Senate Resolution number 8.
It's after 2.
To that motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion prevails. Senator Gazelka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, we're about to adjourn sine die. I think you're aware that the House did not pass the bonding bill or tax relief and has gone sine die, so our work is done. Thank you for your work on the police accountability bill. I think that was very important. And so, Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn sine die.
Senator Gazelka moves that the Senate adjourn sine die. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion prevails. The Senate is adjourned.